Hi, I'm Tom Zimmerman from the EMDR podcast. This episode is about working with clients' parts inside of Flash therapy. And in this video, we're working primarily on the client's system of parts, but that's only one aspect of what we mean by dissociation. So before we get too into working with clients' parts, we need to talk a little bit about dissociation, only because in almost every consultation when dissociation comes up, it's never quite clear to me exactly what the consultant or the consultee means when they say, and the client dissociated. So we want to be very, very clear about the kinds of things that may go under that heading, and we want to start to develop some language. Because as we're going to see, so many different things go under the heading of dissociation. In a lot of ways, it feels like dissociation is this black box that we throw a lot of stuff that we don't really understand into, stuff that's loosely connected with the freeze response. So part of what we may mean by dissociation, or if we think about things that may be dissociated or disconnected or severed, memory or parts of memory can become dissociated. There's an enormous amount of, history of that, evidence of that. A client may have this much memory and that whole middle piece may be gone. Clients may not remember anything before the age of 12, before the age of 6, before the age of 9, before the age of 17. Also, the body or parts of the body may become disconnected from the self, from identity, from reality, from the universe, from focus. So somatic dissociation is particularly a problem in many transformational trauma therapies, including EMDR. Also, dissociation, what we may mean by that is a disconnection from a sense of reality or the sense of personhood or a sense of having a self that's in a world that's real. Emotions also can become dissociated. And of course, there are many, many, many things that can come in many forms of dissociating from the present, dissociating from right here, right now. Huge continuums of disconnecting from the present, many of which are, I guess to say all of which at least have the intention of being adaptive. So obviously parts of the self can become disconnected from other parts of the self. Parts of the self may struggle to communicate clearly and effectively with other parts of the self. They may also not, have difficulty communicating. So regardless of the form that a particular type or category or construct of dissociation takes, Flash therapy seems ideally suited for the treatment of these issues. I have seen my clients do really deeply transformational work with Flash when they've really struggled in other approaches. So if what we're talking about is doing Flash in the context of working effectively with parts of the self, that's best done in the context where we're already normalizing and working with those parts outside of Flash. So we don't want to, when we're thinking about doing Flash, that doesn't need to be the time that we're first introducing and exploring the idea of parts. So clients who have parts, we want to have, we want to have spent some time exploring that, understanding that, normalizing that in ways ideally and hopefully that are rich, that are compassionate, that are deeply, deeply kind, and are deeply respectful of the roles that different parts have played in the client's survival, in the client's protection, and to be honest, even in the client's sense of identity. So we don't want to view parts as a problem. Parts are not a problem. Everyone has parts. And we want to engage those parts quite simply because it's the right thing to do. And it's something that we're going to want to do regardless of our approach. Failure to do that can cause a lot of problems. It can cause a lot of problems, including problems related to, the client feeling like you understand them, including problems where Flash may break down in ways that are very difficult to understand if we don't understand that we are, in fact, always working with a system. So, in general, my clients with identified parts really like Flash compared to other therapies like EMDR. They like the idea that we can do difficult work while sitting in a calm scene instead of sitting in distress. Sometimes kid parts may view the calm scene as a kind of play. So the calm scene in some ways is a lot more predictable. It has a lot less variables. And a lot of times parts are a little bit more comfortable with how other parts are going to respond or may respond. So a lot of times when preparing to do EMDR therapy, we'll also engage parts. And a part may say, look, I'm okay with this. I'm all right with this. But, but Jeremy, the Jeremy part, he's not going to handle this well. Therefore, I don't think this is a good idea because I'm afraid of how this other part is not going to be able to handle this. So in general, the parts, my experience has been that parts are much more likely, the client's parts are much more likely to consent to this journey because it does afford a little bit more predictability and introduces a little bit less uncertainty related to what's about to happen, what we're about to feel, and what may need to happen before connections can start to form and make. So if we think about, working with parts from a 4 blinks version of Flash perspective, step 1 is developing a container. And as with any resource, we want to make sure that containment is working for all parts. We want to make sure that we have explained and addressed the questions of all parts related to what we're doing. Some parts may feel that containment is minimizing, and we want to be clear. The reason we're doing containment is so that we have all the focus for the calm scene. We're going to contain things that are true. We're going to contain things that are important. We're going to contain things that are legitimate. We're going to contain things that are distressing. We're going to contain everything that is not in the calm scene. So the whole point of containment is pushing that out, and we may need to use age-appropriate language sometimes to explain to parts what we're doing, why we're doing it. So it is also possible for different parts of the self to have and do this process in a parallel way. One part may be using a box, and another part may be containering whatever the distress is from its perspective into a safe, and that's okay, right? So we want to think in terms of parallel processes when we're working with a system. And in short, containment, when it works, it needs to work for all parts, okay? Step 2 is developing the positive scene. So we want to explore the kinds of things or the kinds of interests or the kinds of passions or the kinds of visual stimuli that may be compelling for all parts. Is there a scene or a process that all parts might more easily endorse? Maybe it's the somatic memory of rocking a young child. Maybe different parts get different things out of, petting your dog between his ears or under his chin or on his belly. So I have clients whose parts do appreciate different aspects of the calm scene. Some parts may focus on the sky, other parts may focus on the waves, others focus on the seagulls. So it's also possible that there may be an alternative activity or process that a particular part might engage in while many of the parts are focusing on a particular scene. Sometimes a park will say, look, y'all do what y'all are going to do. I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go over here and I'm going to read my Motor Trends magazine. So again, I don't mean to imply that all parts have to, be focused on the scene, but we do want to engage them, even in scene selection, and see what their plan is related to the calm scene, because that's sort of where we're going to be spending most of our time. See what the plan is. Let's see if they have any concerns related to the calm scene. Now, step 3, target selection. And target selection really does need to involve participation of all accessible parts. So this is a conversation we are having with the system. What memory would be a good memory for the system to work on today? And don't be surprised if parts that maybe haven't had a lot to say in the past may suddenly have some opinions, guidance, cautions, or concerns. Ask permission from all parts from a place of openness and curiosity before we do any work. Be prepared to address the concerns that individual parts may have. For instance, a client may say, this particular part is worried about what will happen if we forget that memory, right? Another part may be worried about what will happen if a flashback occurs. So be prepared to answer questions like this, or what's going to happen if this doesn't go the way that it goes, the way we're anticipating that it's going to go. What's the plan to deal with this? Because one part may not want to have to deal with and clean up the catastrophe of something not going well. Many parts systems that I've worked with have had a part that seems a little bit contrarian. By that I mean it does a lot of grumbling and will often grumble about almost any plan. So often these parts may permit the work to continue, right? They may say things like, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm not going to stop it, but when this doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, I'm going to be there and I'm going to remind you, I didn't think this was a good idea. So they may reserve the right to comment on the process if things don't go as planned, but they may not give you an explicit thumbs up that it's okay to do this, but we do want to get consent that it is, that they're not vetoing, right? So some parts may just simply play such a contrarian role that it may be difficult to get an explicit, clear thumbs up, but we do want to engage those parts. Now, inside reprocessing in Flash, again, lightly activate container, calm scene blinks, right? Once we start, we want this seesaw to keep going, right? We want this seesaw to keep going, but we also want to be open and attentive if any part, even after we've started, raises concerns, because where they may raise concerns may be just a flood of body distress. So anytime a part says, I don't like this, we're not doing, I don't think this is a good idea, here's what you haven't thought about, here's how that calm scene and that memory you're trying to work on are intersecting, all of that information is relevant, it's important, we need to hear it, and we're going to need to hear that part out. So, long story short, if you're always working with a system, what you may not be aware of is the composition and the relationship between the parts of that system. That is important to know. So if we're going on a journey with a family, we need to, a family of parts, we need to get consent for everyone that's going on that journey. So those are just some thoughts about dissociation, about working with clients' parts. Again, this isn't anything to be terrified of. This isn't anything to fear. Your clients even on the most, with the most severe forms of dissociation, those are clients that probably need to heal the most. Those are clients that probably need to most unburden. And Flash therapy is a remarkable, remarkable, remarkable way to heal. Working with a system is not astronomically more difficult than pretending as though that system doesn't exist. So again, you're always working with parts. You're always working with a system. Let's get that. Let's get those voices. Let's get that, those issues, those concerns, and those assets. Let's not forget that when we're working with a system, we're not working with problems, right? We're working with skills and talent and insight and deep resilience and also concerns and fears and burdens. So we're working with all of it. And don't forget that when we're working, we're also working with good. And thank goodness for every part and every role that has, contributed to the client's survival and gotten them into your office in order to do this incredibly important unburdening work. So if you have questions, if you have difficulties, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to help. Thank you for all the good work that you're doing with your clients. And thank you for all the good work that you're doing in the world.